The Canon RF 200 to 500mm f4 L-series image stabilized USM lens, it's real, and it's going to be announced later this year. Or is it going to be early next year, in time for Canon's announcement of the Canon EOS R1, their flagship mirrorless camera? Well, stick around after this short break as I've got all the details. But first, please do me a favor. Follow me on Twitter, but most importantly, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really does help this channel grow. And if you're already a subscriber, thanks so much. Canon recently announced the RF 100 to 300mm L-series f2.8, but other than that, it's been rather quiet for RF lenses this year, well, with the exception of a few kit lenses. But early this morning, Canon rumors said that we have confirmed that a Canon RF 200 to 500mm f4 L-series image stabilized USM is coming in Q4, or perhaps Q1 of 2024, ahead of the Canon EOS R1. Just like Canon did with the 100 to 300mm RF lens, the f2.8, instead of giving us a prime, they gave us a zoom lens, and just like the 200 to 500mm, we're getting that instead of the 500mm prime. Now, I'm not saying that we aren't getting primes later down the road, but what Canon's focusing on right now, what their priority is giving us these high quality, high grade L-series glass, professional grade lenses in zooms instead of primes right away. And Canon's getting ready for that release of the R1. We know it's coming. It's not a secret anymore, although Canon hasn't given us some sort of development announcement. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that is coming later on this year. We're not going to get an announcement this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the fourth quarter we start getting leaks, we start getting information coming out about that camera, the R1, and even the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. This camera is supposed to be announced later this year. And when I say later this year, I'm talking about late October or early November. That camera is supposed to start shipping in early 2024, and that camera will be announced and will ship at a different time than the Canon EOS R1. The R1 is going to be the focus of 2024, and I wouldn't be surprised if the R5 Mark II is announced later in this year and then start shipping early in the first quarter, and then the R1 to be announced later. But it's really kind of up in the air. We've seen Canon in the past with the Canon 1DX Mark III announce that camera in the second week of January. I mean, Canon could go ahead and announce the R5 Mark II in late October, early November, and it start shipping in January or even February, and then announce the Canon EOS R1 in the first quarter, probably January, giving them enough time to get them shipping, and that will probably take a month or two. So it's really hard to say what Canon's going to do. Now, the other option Canon has is the R5 Mark II will be announced in July, like it was back in 2020, and that would mark the 4-year mark for the Canon EOS R5 successor. And that too would fit with history. We've seen the 5 series cameras released every 3 to 5 years, mostly every 3 to 4 years. The 5-year wait, well, that was because of Canon switching to mirrorless, and that was because of everything, the whole kerfuffle we had starting in 2020. I'm starting to block that out of my mind, everything that happened there, and with my memory, that's not too hard. So, yes, definitely the R5 Mark II, the R1 are coming, but the 200 to 500mm f4 L series image stabilized USM, it is going to be announced, getting us ready for the 2024 Olympics, getting us ready for Canon's big announcement of their flagship camera, the Canon EOS R1. We've been waiting for this camera a long time. The 1DX Mark III came out back in early 2020. In January is when we got the announcement. And then a couple of years ago, we got the Canon EOS R3. And for many of us, we kind of look at this camera and think, you know, it's a nice camera. It's not exciting, it's not bold, but it's kind of a mirrorless version of the 1DX Mark III. It's got some improvements, some enhancements over the 1DX Mark III, but it's not a 1DX Mark III. But it doesn't have Type B CF Express cards. And that's something you'd expect to see on a camera costing $6,000, a camera that is essentially the de facto, the stand-in mirrorless replacement of the 1DX Mark III. No, Canon's telling you that while in effect it is kind of their flagship right now in terms of mirrorless, with a single CF Express Type B card slot and one UHS 2 card slot, it is not, it is definitely not their flagship mirrorless camera. The R1 is going to take that crown and it is going to be their mirrorless king, their camera to beat all, their master of everything. And so the Canon EOS R1 is coming. It's going to be the best camera that Canon has in terms of video and stills capabilities. It's not going to be 24 or 20 megapixels in terms of resolution. Canon's going to boost this camera north of 45 megapixels. The only question is how far, and there's been an awful lot of speculation saying Canon's going to go 50, 60, or even higher. Some people have even speculated that it could go all the way up to 85 or even 102 megapixels. But me, no, I feel a little bit more, well, I'm British after all, and I'd rather understate this than overstate it. While I do think that the Canon EOS R1 is going to reach resolutions of around 45 or 50 megapixels, I can't quite see them going to 85 or 102 megapixels, but I could be wrong. The Canon EOS R1 will be Canon's master of everything in terms of video and stills capabilities, but will it be the master of everything in terms of everything that Sony, Nikon, and Panasonic have put out there? That's a tall order, and it could be. They've had plenty of years to work on this camera, to have a camera that's better than the A1, the Z8, the Z9, and every other camera out there, including the R5 and the R3. We'll just have to wait and see. But let's get back to our main story here, and that's the 200 to 500 millimeter. Canon, just like they did with the 100 to 300 millimeter, they're going to focus on keeping this thing lightweight. The Canon RF 200 to 500 millimeter f4 L-series image stabilized USM, it's not going to come with a built-in teleconverter. However, one is definitely coming. One is going to be on the way, and it's going to be built to work with the recently announced 100 to 300 millimeter, as well as the coming 200 to 500 millimeter f4. So we've got a lot planned for 2024, and I think 2023 has been a pretty good year already. We've gotten a lot of camera announcements from Panasonic. Look, they finally gave us a camera with a phase detect autofocus system. How great is that? And Canon released two cameras, the R50 and the R8, and neither one of them had a cripple hammer, uncropped video, not only uncropped video, but 6K oversample 4K, and not just in the R8, but in the $679 R50. And yes, while these cameras might have things that have you going, oh, I wish it had IBIS, or I wish it had dual card slots or dual CF Express card slots or something like that, keep in mind that this is Canon segmenting these cameras, and they're really solid cameras. We don't have this cripple hammer that used to come and beat these cameras, having us go, I like video, but 1.7 times crop. I like stills, but are you kidding me? Only 6 frames per second or some other thing, a single card slot? No, Canon has definitely given us some really good cameras here. And look what Nikon just delivered. They just gave us a Z9 in the Z8 for $1,500 less, a camera that's got better capabilities than the Canon EOS R5 for $39.99 with a stacked sensor. Under $4,000 with a stacked sensor, that is a big deal. So as we move into the second half of 2024, I can certainly expect to see some more big announcements. If we don't have anything from Panasonic on an S1H Mark II, an S1 Mark II, or anything else in the S1 series, I would start looking to September, October, to the fall for some sort of refresh, because we are just past the 4-year mark. The fall will put it at 4.5 years, and if we have to wait until 2025, well, that would put it at 5 years. And yes, Panasonic had us wait 5 years for the GH6, but I certainly hope we don't have to wait 5 years for an S1H refresh. There's been an awful lot coming out on the market. Look at the Z8, the Canon EOS R5. A lot has happened in 4 years, and Panasonic, we're definitely due. We're looking forward to seeing what goodness you're going to bake into a competitor to the Canon EOS R5, the Nikon Z8, the Sony A7 R5. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Panasonic's got for us here. But outside of that, well, we have some other announcements. We're seeing an awful lot of affordable cameras, APS-C cameras from Sony, from Canon, and I'm curious to see what else we're going to see this year. I do suspect Canon's going to give us some announcements this year, but the lineup is mostly refresh. What we're looking at in terms of refreshing is actually previous models that Canon has come out with, such as the Canon EOS R5. So an announcement of the R5 Mark II is definitely possible, definitely in the cards. It's plausible for late October, early November. And then, as I said earlier in the video, we'll start shipping in the first quarter. But that R1, that's the big one. I don't know if we'll get a development announcement for the R1 in the fall. like we did in October, I think it was around October the 28th of 2019, we had a development announcement for the 1DX Mark III, which was announced in the second week of January. So it is possible that Canon might start really, revving things up with a development announcement for the R1 this fall, but we'll just have to wait and see. Things are going to get exciting. We've got the Olympics in 2024, so we're going to see a lot of pro gear coming out, pro camera bodies, refreshes, and also lenses. So some really exciting stuff. But before signing off, I've received a lot of questions asking about mid-priced lenses, mid-range telephoto lenses, and even some unique RFS lenses like 15 to 85 millimeter f2.8 to 4, but I've heard nothing. As we get up to the Olympics, the focus is going to be on the high end, the L series, and just look at that 100 to 300 millimeter f2.8, $9,500. I love camera gear. I love the best of the best, but even for my budget, having a channel focused on cameras, I can't afford a camera lens like that. I mean, my top end, the really top end for me, is this guy right here, and this is Canon's RF 100 to 500 millimeter, and I really do love this thing. I love how lightweight it is. I love how that I can even shoot handheld, even all the way out to extended to 500 millimeters, but that is still a very expensive lens at around $2,800, $2,700. Here in Canada, it cost me around $4,300. It's not cheap, it's not affordable, but it looks darn right low priced and affordable when you consider the price of the 100 to 300 millimeter and most likely the price of the 200 to 500 millimeter. I do see, like you, a glaring omission in Canon's lineup for affordable mid-level glass. You see, when I got started into cameras, that's really where I was focused. I didn't like the kit lenses, but that mid-level glass really, really attracted me. And even back then, the 100 millimeter macro f2.8 EF version was far more affordable. Today, we're just seeing a lot more expensive glass here. While we're seeing cameras like the R50 and even the R10, we're not seeing a whole lot of glass that's affordable. And I think what Canon's got or is intended for us is, hey, go ahead and grab that EF to RF adapter, which is right here, and strap this on your camera, and then, yeah, use all our EF lenses, and that's fine and dandy. But what they don't realize is people don't want to do that. They want new, they want refreshed. And they're getting a little bit frustrated when they see all these expensive lenses out there. So Canon, if you're listening, and I know you are, drop us a hint. People who bought the R50, the R10, the R7, they're looking for some mid-level, mid-priced glass for the RF system. Toss us a bone here. You're producing some really great glass. I've certainly purchased a lot of it. I've got the RF 100 to 500 millimeter back here. I've got the 50 millimeter f1.2, the 100 millimeter macro, the 24 to 105. I love the quality of this glass, but if we can just sort of bring things back, if we can just sort of bring our heads out of the clouds, out of the stratosphere a little bit, there's a huge amount of your audience that is looking for some more affordable glass around that $1,000 price point. Some zooms, some primes, especially some primes. We'd really appreciate that. And if you, watching at home, want to stay up to date on all the latest camera news and rumors, well then go ahead and smash that subscribe button, but also don't forget to hit that notification bell, because that way you'll get notified as soon as I put out a new video. But for all the minor news and rumors and price discounts, well then go ahead and follow me on Twitter, because for all those news stories, rumor stories, or price discounts, all those stories that aren't quite big enough to have their own separate video, yeah, go ahead and follow me on Twitter, because I'll often put out a tweet covering them off right here. But I do want to tell you about a discount that's still ongoing for the Canon EOS R5, and this is the link for it right here. Adorama and B&H, they both have it on sale. If you've been waiting for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, but you find it a little bit expensive at around $4,000, which is the expected price range of this camera, it could go up to $4,299. You really want to consider the price of the Canon EOS R5 right now. It's on sale, $500 off, $33.99, but it also comes with the battery grip, a $350 battery grip. And if you don't need the battery grip, you can go ahead and sell that, and that would drop the price down to as low as $3,000 or $3,050. However, you're probably going to discount it a little bit to move it. So just imagine picking up the Canon EOS R5 for just around $3,100 or $3,150. I think that's a really terrific deal. If I didn't have the Canon EOS R5 right now, I'd probably go out and buy it. And I was even contemplating buying another one, but for me, it makes sense to wait a little longer to get the R5 Mark II, because then, just like I have with the R5, I've talked about it for years. I've produced over 1,100 videos with it. I can talk to you about it from my own experience, and I want to do exactly the same with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, and I want to keep both cameras so I can say, look, I've had the R5 that came out in 2020 for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, and it's still working. I want to talk about and review these cameras into the long term. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a great weekend. Oh, I think it's a long weekend in both countries, here in Canada and the United States. Here we call it the May 2-4 weekend. I think it's based off of Queen Victoria. And in the United States, I think you have Memorial Day. Now, are they both the same weekend? Or for you watching in the United States, John, is Memorial Day weekend coming 1 week later? Either way, I'm looking for some really nice weather, mid-70s or mid-20s here in Canada, to get out there, to enjoy, to start shooting. Hopefully we don't have any news and rumors this weekend, because I want to forget the channel. I want to get out there, and like you, I want to put the camera in my hand, and I want to shoot stills, and I want to shoot video. This is the time of year where I like to take out the 100 to 500 millimeter, because spring is in the air. The opportunity to take shots of birds or geese, turtles, everything, wildlife, swans. We've got some trumpet swans here, and to be able to capture them, to be able to capture life as it's happening in spring, that's the time to use a lens like this. So I bought it in the fall last year. I only used it for a few scenarios before it was time to pack it in, and it sat there for most of the time. But that's it for now, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a great long weekend, and we'll see you again soon.